You get plenty of coverage of Oklahoma State football. You think you hear all the noise coming from Gallagher-Iba Arena when you get your Cowboy basketball news. But you don't.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
And there's a couple of Jordans here to fix just that. This is the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast.
This could be a podcast. Anyone with a computer can make one.
Here are your hosts, Jordan Keene and Jordan Bishop.
Welcome back into the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast. Jordan King, Jordan Bishop on the Triple Play Sports Podcast Network. And Jordan, welcome in. This is podcast number 10. Hard to believe we've been doing this, I think, 9 weeks now. This might be, nine weeks because we did a double episode last week. Obviously had Chelsea Alexander and then Vanessa Shippey, and a good weekend for the Cowgirl softball team. We'll get to that coming up, but people should stick around for the middle. We'll have I think it was over a 30-minute interview with associate head coach from the Cowgirl basketball team, Bill Annan.
Yeah. 9 weeks is I was in school that long ago, but that's like half a semester or something like that. But so we're going pretty well. I think we got pretty good midterm grades so far. But Coach Annan, I've known him for a long time, and he's always great to talk to. He's very insightful. It's a very good interview, so I encourage everybody to stick around and listen to that because he gives you a lot of insight into how he got here and also what he does and just kind of what is more than just the X's and O's of the Cowgirl basketball program.
And a phenomenal storyteller as well, and we get into some of that coming up here in just a few minutes. And since we do have a Cowgirl basketball contributor, Coach Annan, the associate head coach, we'll start off with Cowgirl basketball. I'm not going to throw up the standings on the screen for you if you're watching this, but Baylor ran away with the Big 12 this year, 18-0. Number 2, Iowa State, they were projected to be 7th or 8th, so 6th, I think, somewhere down there. They come in second pretty handily here, 13-5. Texas, 11-6. West Virginia 11-7, Kansas State 11-7. So those are the top 5 teams. TCU 10-7, Oklahoma State 5-13. 4-13 is OU. If OU is able to knock off Texas Tech tonight, as we record this on a Tuesday, it'll either come out Tuesday night or Wednesday morning here for the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast. If they're able to knock off Texas Tech, they will move to the 7th seed and force an opening round matchup in the Big 12 tournament with Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. Texas Tech 3-14 as we sit, and 2-16 bringing up the pack. In last place is Kansas. So not a whole lot of shocks here, not a whole lot of shuffling around. The interesting thing is, I believe TCU in the tournament as they speak right now, and West Virginia the first 4 out, I believe, on the latest bracketology. So it's interesting how that is, and obviously TCU got a big game coming up later on tonight. I believe do they play Texas?
Yes, they do, and Kansas State was moving in to the last 4 in this week's bracketology with Charlie Cream. So I do think, I think I said last week, 6 teams I believe will get in. West Virginia I know is on the bubble right now, but I think if they have a good showing this weekend in Oklahoma City, they can get in. And it's just overall talking about Iowa State. I was reading last night before the women's game over here at Oklahoma State and what Coach Finley's done there, not only this year, but when he got there, Iowa State wasn't really known for women's basketball. I don't know if they ever made a tournament before he got there, and they made, I think, 11 since he's been there. They're going to make one this year, obviously, and they turned pretty much everything around. I know last year there was kind of a down year, but this year with what they've done and with him and Bridget Carlton, I think it should be a player and coach of the year sweep tomorrow whenever they release the yearly awards.
And I think you look at where they're expected to finish versus where they do finish, and that's what I look at a lot for Coach of the Year awards. And I think that's part of the reason that on the Baylor side, Scott Drew has a chance, and why I think Iowa State should sweep. I agree with you. I think they should sweep here, Player of the Year and Coach of the Year. And like I said, it's a sham. Let me repeat that. It's a sham if Bridget Carlton is not the coach or the Player of the Year in the Big 12. I'm sorry, she's the most complete player, and you look at the way she's impacted this whole Big 12 season. Honestly, she's been tremendous for Iowa State. So, talking about Kansas State, you and I both out at the ball game last night, saw a second half like we haven't really seen a lot at GIA, mostly because Oklahoma State hasn't been getting these types of results that you would hope. But what a performance by K-State in the second half. I mean, you look at Peyton Williams, 7 of 15, 1 of 3 from 3, got a couple threes to fall. 9 of 11 is the number that jumps off the page at you from the free throw line. 14 boards, and easy. She made a double-double look really easy last night. 24 points, 14 rebounds, and just tremendous last night there from the junior Peyton Williams. Got to deal with her one more year.
Yeah, she was great. Rachel Ranke, she had some key threes there in the second half. And even the star player, Kayla Goth, she was held scoreless in the first half. And thinking, oh, man, maybe the Cowgirls have got something here. And then she goes off and she finishes with 10 points and I think 7 assists, something like that. So they had great production from their stars. And Peyton Williams, she had a fantastic game. I don't really see them taking a step off next year with her coming back, because what she does, she's basically like a Bridget Carlton in terms of what she can do and all the skill set she has.
You know what's interesting? Lauren Cox comes back, obviously, for Baylor, and she'll be a returning player of the year candidate right off the bat. But this is another one that I'm going to be watching next year very intently, because Peyton Williams is a tremendous player, although not my favorite player in the Big 12. That's obviously Kayla Goth. I was joking around with you yesterday. She's my favorite Big 12 player ever to play women's basketball now, because she comes from DeForest, Wisconsin. Not sure how Wisconsin let her get out. She plays all 40 minutes last night. I watched during halftime. She did not miss a shot coming out in the second half, and they needed her. I mean, 10 points, 7 assists. It's a quiet game by her standards. She had 30 points in her final home game, I believe, for Kansas State not too long ago. So, I mean, she probably thought she had a bad game. But you look at the leadership she brings, the way she was able to kind of calm them down. Coach Littell in the postgame talked about how there were a couple runouts that he thought changed the complexion of the game. And she was the maestro of those. And that was a huge, huge deal. Over on Oklahoma State's side, though, I want to talk about this. I had 19 assists. Normally, I agree with the stat line. I think they gypped Braxton Miller out of an assist on a Maria Castro 3. But 19 assists by my account on 23 made field goals. Have you ever seen anything like that? Like, this was tremendous sharing of the ball, and unfortunately, the rest of the game wasn't there for them, and they weren't able to create by themselves, which is part of the reason they lost. But I thought it was a tremendous, if you were going to take a positive, you don't take many positives from losses, but if you were, and the kind of a silver lining, that was it for me.
Yeah, and we talked all year about how the ball movement needs to, even Coach Littell says the ball gets stuck in their hands, and they need to learn how to share the ball better. And all these younger kids, they used to be the best player on their high school teams. They're still acclimating to being part of a team that you need to learn to share the ball. So I think that was a sign last night that they're learning that and picking it up. Because, yeah, I've never seen 19 on 23 except for in my 2K games, and those are in a fantasy world. So that's not the same. But, I just really think that's one of the few positives. And obviously it was senior night, and Natasha Jones had 12 boards, and then Maria Castro had a good game. She was second in scoring with 13 points, and she had 10 boards for a double-double. And so there were some positives last night, but it's just I think it was overall showing what's the second half of the season the Cowgirls have been, where their defense just in the second half is can't hold up, and then they just can't. And they're in a scoring race they can't keep up. So
back-to-back games giving up 50-plus points in the second half, and that's obviously a cause for concern moving forward. But, this season, not a ton that you take out of it, in my opinion. I mean, it is what it is. You struggled this year, and that's the way it goes. I mean, you're going to have those years that you do struggle. They were young this year. If you were going to look for maybe some excuses for this team, and I know that the coaching staff wouldn't use those, but they were young this year, a little bit inexperienced. But when you have two, in my opinion, at least about halfway through, you had 2 Player of the Year candidates, and you should finish in the top 6 of the conference. And like we said last week, I believe it was, or 2 weeks ago, if this bubble expands to 6 Big 12 teams getting in the tournament, you have to be even more disappointed, because you should be there. There's no doubt about that. So, a disappointing year, but the future looks bright for this program, and that's part of what we hear here in this interview coming up in just a few seconds from Coach Annan.
Yeah, and I think that he's mentioned it, and so did Coach Littell, that they've gone through this before, where they've had a bad year. And you even look at Iowa State; they were 14-17 last year. Now they're second in the conference. So it's not like it's all doom and gloom if they miss out on a postseason tournament, because they have the pieces, and they have a lot of pieces coming in. that Coach Ann talked about in this interview that are going to be really good stars, I think, coming for the Cowgirls next year.
Sounds good. That's what you should listen for. And also, man, just listen to these stories. They're tremendous stories. I think you'll learn a lot about the journey that Coach Annan has taken to the top. And one of the best women's college basketball conferences in the country. And he is an instrumental part of a team that's done pretty well in that conference over the past decade or so. So here's Bill Annan, the associate head coach of the Cowgirls. Thanks again to him for joining us. Here he is. Welcome back into the Triple Play production studios here. Jordan and Jordan here on the Cowgirl Coverage podcast, and joined now by the associate head coach of the Cowgirls, Bill Annan. And, Coach, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. I appreciate the offer and excited about being here, to be honest with you. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. And obviously a well-decorated high school career up in Kansas and coaching up there, and three-time, I believe, Kansas Basketball Coaches Association Coach of the Year. And what kind of made you, starting off here, what kind of made you want to get into the college ranks now? I believe your 10th or 11th season here at Oklahoma State?
Correct, Jordan. It's been kind of one of those crazy stories. You know, I started out coach on the guys' side in high school. My first job was in North Topeka, and I was a JV boys coach and enjoyed that. And wife and I were newly married and did that for 3 or 4 years. And one of the parents on the girls' side had asked me if I'd ever coached girls before, and I said no. And so he said, hey, I've got an AAU team I'd like to have you coach. I've just put together maybe an all-star team for the state of Kansas, and we're looking for maybe a non-parent to do it, and didn't know if you'd be interested. So I kind of thought about it. I've never coached girls before, really never even thought about doing it. So Marsh and I talked about it and thought we'd give it a shot, and really had a good time. And he was right. He said, I'll do everything. I'll set up the hotels and where we travel, and all you got to do is just be at practices and kind of run the team, and, we'll just kind of flow with it. So we did and had a really good time. Of course, I really enjoyed that. There was a difference between coaching guys and coaching girls. There really was, and that kind of appealed to me. And so the next summer rolled around, and he asked me to do it again. And again, I had a lot of fun doing that. And so a job across town opened up, and I applied for it. I'm a business teacher, and so applied for it and got it. A program that I found out I didn't do a lot of research, so that wasn't real smart on my part. So I got the job, thrilled about it. Wow, I applied for a job and got it. This is great, and so hopped in there and found out later I was the only one who applied for the job. So things like that happened. Then found out again they were 0-21 before I got there. So. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to look at that, and I'm usually a very positive person. The cup's usually half full, so my first thought was, well, the only way to go is up, so that's not a problem. And I knew that some of the girls who I was coaching on this all-star team were coming to the school I was going to be. So if I could kind of get things going, we're probably going to be okay. And so sure enough, what happened was very true. Kind of got in there and got my feet wet and kind of got used to being the head coach and running your own program. I enjoyed the teaching side of it too. Enjoyed that, and things took off because we really had some good kids that could play. Had a kid that played on the national championship at Notre Dame when they won it all, and a couple of D2 kids that won national championships. And so, obviously, coaches are really smart when they have really good players. And bottom line, I did, and really had good parental support, as well as our district too. So that all worked out really well. And so 23 years of coaching high school was great, and I'm a K-State grad, and so I always worked K-State summer camps, a way to get back up there, see new drills, and be around those coaches at the time, and that was Deb Patterson, and Coach Etheridge was there at the time, and so I'd always go back and work camps and enjoyed that. And, of course, you still had your network of your high school people, and so one summer, a friend of mine who used to be at Salina South, in Salina, Kansas, he was now down at Oklahoma State as the director of player development. Of course, that's the person that kind of runs the camps. His name was Bruce Erickson. And so Bruce had called me and said, hey, would you come down and work camp? Because our camps are kind of exploding. The enrollment's really increasing. So would you come down and work camp? And I said, well, yeah, it's like a 3.5-hour drive. I've never been to Stillwater. So sure. And he's a really good friend. And so drove down and really enjoyed it. Worked camp for about 2 or 3 days with Coach Budke, Coach Littell, and Bruce, and really had a good time, and kind of got used to Stillwater a little bit, and had a lot of similarities to where I went to school at Kansas State. So did that, and went back and won another high school championship, and so got the call again that summer, hey, come back down. And we're at camp again. We all loved having you. We had a good time. So came back down the following year, and we had a good time again. And so as I was getting ready to kind of wrap things up, Bruce, the friend of mine who was down there, said, hey, he goes, I got something to tell you. He goes, I just took a job at UMKC as their associate head coach. And so he said, my job here is going to come open, and Coach Budke really likes you, and I think he's going to offer you my job. Well, I didn't know how to react to that. I wasn't down here to get a job. I was just down here to have a good time, and Coach Budke paid well. So, I mean, it was just kind of a good thing for me to come down and work. And so I was just kind of taken back. And so sure enough, camp ended, and Coach Budke said, hey, you and I are going to go grab a meal, together. And so I'll never forget he took me to Cherokee Strip, and because Coach loved barbecue. And so we sat around, and he said, hey, Bruce probably told you this, but here's the situation, and here's what I'm thinking, and I just need to know where are you? Well, my son, I have 2 boys, and my oldest son, Trent, had just graduated from high school. He was going to go to college. He was at Washburn, which is a D2 school in Topeka. Grant, my youngest, was just coming into his junior year, and so the move would have been okay. And so, but he was really honest with me, guys. I mean, he just flat said, Bill, you will take a pay cut to come here. I got to be completely honest with you. What you're getting paid at your high school is a little bit more than I can pay you here. I said, okay. He goes, second, you will not coach anything here. You can't be on the floor coaching. Now, you can break some film down for us, and there's some things you can do basketball-wise, but you will not be on the floor coaching per NCAA rules. So Coach Bucky was very honest, laid everything out about what this position was like. But he said, I just, if you want to do it, talk to Marcia and all that. So I took off, drove home, told Marcia about it. And she goes, what do you think? And I said, I'm not going to take it. I've got all these kids coming back. I really enjoy high school. I think I've got it kind of going on there, and I've got a bunch of kids returning, and so I'm just kind of feeling comfortable, and so I thought I'd stay. And she was like, okay, that's cool. I said, plus, I don't want to move my youngest son. Being a teacher, I've seen when you move kids that late, it usually doesn't work out well. So next morning got up, messed around the house, and she goes, hey, have you thought about that job anymore down there at Oklahoma State? And I said, well, not really. Why? And she goes, I really think you need to take it. And that really kind of set me back because I didn't think she would be going that direction. I said, whoa. I said, really? And she goes, yeah. And I said, why is that? And she was very honest about it. She goes, Bill, here's the deal. I'm not sure what else you can do at this high school. I mean, you're the head of your department in teaching business. You're running the school bank. You've won state championships. You've got a program that's obviously very well respected in the state, and you belong to the Coaches Association. And I'm not sure what else you can do. And you've seen it, and I've seen it. After you've built it up so high, the only place to go sometime is down. Mm-hmm. She goes, now you came into it when it was the only place to go was up. Well, you built it. Now I'm worried about where it's going to end up. And she goes, hey, try this. Let's just make the move. If it doesn't work, we'll get another high school job somewhere else. I'm cool with that. But I just want you to try this because I don't want you to regret it because these jobs don't open up very often anyway. And so, guys, that's what happened. That's exactly how it rolled. I moved down here, grabbed me an apartment over there at Squires Landing. I worked. Marcia stayed back with Grant, so we made a deal with my youngest son. He had to graduate mid-year, his senior year, and so he said, I'm cool with that. So Marcia and Grant stayed back in Topeka. I was in Stillwater. On the weekends, either I would drive back to see her or she would drive to see me, and that's just how we worked that for about a year and a half. And I'm where I'm at now, and if she wouldn't have pushed me a little bit, I probably would still be back coaching in Topeka, which I've always told people this. I liked what I was doing. I'm very fortunate. I'm one of those fortunate people that I've enjoyed the jobs that I've had. I really enjoy what I do, but I really enjoy being around kids and people. So this is a little different job, obviously, being a college coach, but you're still around people trying to help them reach their goals. But it's just a different setting, and I'm glad I made the move. And
part of the reason we picked this time to bring you on was K-State last night, and obviously, what's that like? Because I think you look at the program notes a lot of times and you see, oh, look at that coach is coaching against his alma mater, and that's the case where you see them twice a year. And what's that like when you're walking out there and you see the purple with the K-State across the Wildcats across the chest? What is that like now as a Cowboy? It's a little surreal, just because the amount of time you invested in the school. That's where I met my wife. My in-laws live very close to Manhattan. I only live 45 minutes away. So there's a lot of
of purple still in my body, even though now it bleeds really bright orange. But I always tell people that, if you dig pretty deep, there's a little purple down there too. And so when they come here to play, it's not near the level, Jordan, as if when we go there. Even though Bramlage is a lot different than Ahern was back in the day when I was in school, but still when you walk on there and they're playing the Wabash Cannonball and the Alma Mater and all that, it just brings back a lot of really good memories. Even though we don't win up there, near enough. I think my in-laws wonder how in the hell I'm keeping a job because they've never seen me win much in Manhattan, and we got to get that changed. But whenever I go back, I always see a lot of friends that come back. Players that played for me are still close; they'll come back. Coaches I've coached with are around all, there's a lot of tickets that come into play when I go back to Manhattan. But, yeah, I mean, when you see the purple and the K-State across, that uniform, it brings back a lot of memories.
You mentioned that first couple of years that you wouldn't be able to come on the floor and you'd be doing film, and plus you couldn't teach anymore. What was that whole transition like, having to take a step back pretty much? Well,
Jordan, add to that, like a lot of us, when – you're a family guy, that's what you do, Well, for me, being away from my family, I had to find time to fill because it was really bothering me that I wasn't home, and you're kind of in a routine of, lesson plans and teaching and coaching and running your little kids camp at night, and then you'd come home and there are the boys and there's your wife, you take care of stuff. So what I found myself doing was really putting everything into Cowgirl basketball. So I'd be up at 5 or 6 in the morning. I'd go work out in the gym, which I really didn't do a whole lot of that in high school, but it filled time. And then I'd be in the office by 7:30, and I'd start knocking some of these out. Maybe Coach Bucky said, hey, maybe it was off-season. Hey, I want you to pull up. I want 20 of the best inbounds plays that we had to guard this year in the conference. Just give me 20 of the best ones. So I was always trying to find things to do, always staying ahead of the curve on that. And then what really helped in season was I had the scout for every game, which just meant that you would probably watch the last 4 games that team played. It's like, let's just, K-State last night. So you're watching the last 4 games they played, and you're scripting all their plays and what do they like to run and their personnel. Well, what that did was that taught me, because there's a big difference between high school and college basketball. And a big part of it is the coaches are so good about what they do that their players are so talented as well, but it's where they put them at the right spot at the right time. And so that, for me, was a great teaching tool, just because you think you're a pretty good high school coach. And, again, that comes with good players. But when you get to this level, the X's and O's take on a whole different level of intelligence, just the way coaches go about stuff. So for me, it was – I really dived into that part of it. And Coach Budke was kind of like, hey, he didn't say it, and he was so good about not just kind of knocking you in the forehead. He was just like, hey, study this, which meant there's a difference, between where you were and where you're headed. Study this on your own, and then we'll kind of see where things go. And so I jumped into that. The fundraising part was different for me. So whether it was a golfing fundraiser in the summer or doing things with booster clubs, that we tried to keep that going a little bit. That was helpful. Bruce always had the Wednesday show with Casey, which that was different for me, but I enjoyed that part of it. So there was ways to fill the void of not being in charge as much, but yet Coach Budke made sure that you felt like you were an integral part about what was going on, even though you weren't on the floor coaching. He would be that guy that after practice would stop by and say, hey, give me your thoughts on our zone offense. And he was just being nice, Yeah. Because he's going to run what he wants to run. He didn't care less what I thought. But he was being nice about it, like, hey, and then he'd throw things back at me, like, what would you do? And so he was just a really good mentor for me and understood my position. And that's the part that I probably respected Coach the most, was he really understood what I gave up to then come here, but at the same time, in his mind, and he told me this, hey, you're going to be a really good college coach. He goes, I don't know where, I hope it's here, but you're going to be a really good college coach. We just got to make sure that everything about the college setting and what it's about, we're going to help you get there. And you're already way ahead of where most people are. And so with him being the mentor that he was, with the opportunity that I was able to do, and Coach was good about keeping everything within the NCAA rules. He was great about that, But, yeah, I'm extremely appreciative just because there's quite a difference, guys, between two. And I think people are out there going, oh, it's the same thing, whether you coach in high school or college. Well, it really isn't, And with the college thing, as you both know, there's a lot more going on besides the X's and O's. When people say, the X's and O's are like maybe 5 to 10% of your real job, that's really true. That's a part of it. But there's so much else that goes into that pie that you're trying to cut up. That's what you have to learn as well, how to juggle all of those different facets of running a major Power 5 BCS program.
When your family did move down here and you kind of got elevated to get more responsibility, then you had to juggle it all over again and try to figure out time because you got more responsibilities at OSU, but also your family's back down here, so you got to find time for them as well.
Very true. Fortunately, both boys wanted to go to Oklahoma State, and we didn't force them into that. I thought they were both going to go to Kansas State. I really did. But no, both of them, got here and really fell in love with the university and what it was about. And so they kind of put their minds into that. And I told them both, said, hey, your mom and I will help you pay for, college a little bit. And both my sons said, no, we don't want to do that. We're going to pay for our own way through. Because that way it's our scholarship and it's our decisions, and what we do is on us, which I thought was a really mature decision on their part. And I kind of went, well, we can still help you a little bit. No, I really want to do it all. So they both really put themselves and dived into their job. Luckily for us, University and Community Federal Credit Union hired Trent on board there as a teller, and he worked his whole way through college doing that, besides getting 4.0 and knocking out the college scene and being an accountant. My youngest son, Grant, didn't want to go that way. So Stan Clark hires him at Eskimo Joe's in the call center, and Grant loved that. And so they were kind of into that a little bit. And so then I was, as you said, changed titles and changed jobs from director of player development into an assistant coach. Well, now I'm recruiting for the first time. Well, I've never done that before. Now I've had players recruited that were playing for me, but I was never a recruiter. Well, man, now you're starting to get out some feelers. You got to network. You got to get kids on the phone. You got to follow all the rules and take the tests and all that. Now you're on the road traveling. Guys, I'd never flown in a plane before I got here. And people are like, what? Never. I'd never flown in a plane in my entire life. And so I get here, and the first thing I'm on a plane flying to wherever to go see a kid in a tournament. I'm flying out. What? Where am I going? How do I get? What gate? What are you talking about? How do you get? So everything for me on that sense was a little stressful just because I'd never done that before. Well, then you're learning how to recruit, and that's the absolute bloodline of your program. You need to outwork people. So I found myself just really consumed with that part. The basketball part I felt very comfortable with just because of maybe the background and kind of what I had been through. I felt pretty good about the X's and O's part of it. But, man, the recruiting part was an eye-opener. It really was. You have to get to know the high school coach, and then you have to get to know the AAU coaches, and then you got to get to know the the player and all of that. And that's just ever changing. And then social media rolls into it. Well, it used to be just Facebook a little bit, and then all of a sudden Twitter becomes on board, and then you got Snap. I mean, it's just all this stuff. So it seemed to be a little overwhelming, but you still have to just prioritize everything. And my wife, like most coaches' wives, is super supportive. Never, ever has ever told me, you don't have enough time for me. It's always, hey, what can I do to help? And she's really good about sending me things at home. Like maybe we're recruiting a kid. Well, then she's on social media finding things out about, hey, she just got chosen player of the week, or hey, she's involved in this club. And so she's very involved in the recruiting even now of players that we're after. She's sending things like, hey, I just saw this, and hey, this just came out, and this school just visited her. And so the family part of this is really true because now my boys are heavily invested in Oklahoma State women's basketball. They're always sending me stuff. They're always kind of chiming in along with my wife to where, we're all in this thing together hoping it works well for everybody. The one thing that has changed, when I coached high school, I come home after games, And we'd sit around the table and talk about the game, and they just listen, right? Like, hey, this is going to be good stuff. You know, what did Dad talk about at halftime, or what happened to Sarah, during the game, and, just things like that. Well, now after games, it's not that way. They're asking me, who the heck made the call at the end of the game? Dad, was that you on that defensive call? That was horrible. So that's kind of changed a little bit. But it's changed because they're so much invested into what we're doing. Now, they can't come to every game. They both live in Tulsa now, but they can't come to every game. But they're watching every game, or they're listening, or they're seeing the box to kind of see what's going on. And my dad is the same way, and Marsha's mom is the same way. And so things have kind of really grown when it just comes to the involvement of everybody, whether it's my brothers or sisters or my brother-in-law. I mean, it's just it really has become a big community that really does pay very close attention to Cowgirl basketball and the direction that we're going.
You talk about recruiting a little bit. What's it like? Obviously you guys have done a good job. You've had a ton of really talented players come through here. Some highly recruited, some non-highly recruited. We were talking about Kaylee Jensen, Jordan and I were, before you came in here, and she was one that not quite as highly recruited, comes out and one of the better players this program's seen. What's it like when they move on and you get to see them afterwards, and you get to see Lauren Goodwin, who maybe you didn't recruit quite as much, but she comes in as a grad transfer and now passed the program, Andrea Riley, Brittany Martin. Then you see these players afterwards still playing, a lot of them are. And what's that like when you are maybe in their living room as high school players, trying to make them feel comfortable about a vision that you have, and now seeing them taking that even past the program?
Well, obviously it makes you feel good because they're still fulfilling that dream that they had way back when they were a junior in high school. I think about a Mandy Coleman who's out in California, and out of the blue I get an email, and the email says, I've got a player. This was her high school coach. I've got a player playing for me. It's a good player, and she's very interested in OSU. And if you wouldn't mind giving me a call. Well, guys, we get those all the time, right? I mean, that's just a normal deal. But I always look at it just in case. And usually there's maybe a short highlight film attached. But there was nothing attached. And so I thought, what in the world? OSU is at Oregon State? I mean, come on now. I mean, she's close to – she's more Sacramento, California. It's not Oklahoma State. So I called her coach, and sure enough, she wanted to come here. She had uncles in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And as the story developed, you go out to see her and talk to her mom and dad, and they had the vision of, well, we think she could be a pretty good college basketball player, but she's got a lot to learn because playing out here, not a lot of – she wasn't challenged very much. And, and as a story, I kind of laugh now because – Coach Tell at first was like, who are you going to see? Well, this girl's out there, and I can't find any film on her because the school doesn't videotape anything. And it's just one of those throwing a rock, in the pond to see where the ripple effect goes. Well, she's 6'3". She throws the shot put 43 feet. Well, I coach a little high school track. That's a pretty good throw. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, what can you have film? Don't have any film. And so, again, call Marsha. Hey, look, find as much as you can on Mandy Coleman, and send it to me. And so here I get pictures, man. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at the size of this kid. Good looking kid. And then the coach says, yeah, and she anchors the 4x100 relay team. I'm like, whoa. She throws a shot, put 43 feet, she anchors the 4x what? So I told Coach, I got to go see this kid. So Coach is like, all right. That's a $1,500 ticket out there, a plane ticket. So I go out to watch her, and sure enough, she's a player. So sitting in the living room, talking to her parents about Mandy, and Mandy's their baby. Well, they want her to get out of California, especially get out of that area that she was in, and really wanted her to come here because, as I mentioned, she had relatives in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And so they asked me, what do you see her first playing? She played point guard in high school as a 6'3" kid. Well, she'll probably play the 4 for us, a stretch 4. And perfect. Okay, and Mandy kind of shaking her. Mandy's very quiet. And Mandy was like, okay. And I said, but Mandy, you handle the ball like a guard. Your post-up game's pretty good. You're a tremendous passer. You're extremely quiet, but I think you're a leader. But we've got to work on some things. Well, Coach, what do you see you're working on? We've got to develop your outside game. You've got to be able to shoot a little better. You've got to guard better, but you haven't had to guard in high school, so that's normal for every kid. So here's the vision that we have, and this is the vision I have for you. That's the position I coach. That's what I'm seeing. This is where we're headed, and kind of go from there. And so she visited us. She visited Alabama. She visited a couple other schools, and decided on us. So when she got here, it was tough, like most freshmen. It was tough the first couple of years, but then she could kind of see the vision and see what was going on. And fortunately for us, you had the Kaylee Jensen show up that took the 5 position. So then Mandy could then really focus on the 4. You had some wing players here that could play it a little bit. And then we dabble in a Lauren Goodwin at the point guard now. We kind of got a team here that's got a lot of pieces that you just kind of felt like, we're fortunate that you have 3 pros on the team that it turned out to be. And you're playing at a pretty high level with them. And they're all really high basketball IQ kids. And so when you see that develop and they get some success here, which is really important, and then, the agent that we have, when I say we, he's a friend of mine that truly does a good job for women's basketball. And he's more of an international guy. And so he took care of Lauren, he took care of Kaylee, he took care of Mandy. Well, Mandy's not really sure where she's going to end up. Now, Kaylee was a no-brainer because, she's already, a free agent going and playing for the Sparks a little bit. So she had a little WNBA dabble. Obviously, Lauren, she's already drafted going to play for the Wings. Well, that all worked out. Well, here's Mandy Coleman going, I haven't quite fulfilled my dream yet. I really wanted to play pro. Well, she wasn't real sure she wanted to play pro until we went to Australia for our international trip. Loved the trip. And that's when she came to me and said, I really think I want to play pro. Before I thought about it, thought it sounded cool to say it, but now I really want to do it. So told her agent, hey, watch this kid. And he loved Mandy. And so sure enough, as time's going on, the year's coming to a halt, Mandy's not getting any love. I'm getting nervous. She's getting nervous. And then her agent says, stop, I've got three different teams that like her. Just let me work this out. Okay, you're going to get nervous. Mandy's getting nervous because she wants to take the first one. He goes, no, we don't do that. And so sure enough, a team from Portugal grabs her up, and her agent told me later, because Bill, here's the deal. Number one, I'm never going to send a kid anywhere where they're not going to get paid on time. And that's your biggest concern about international basketball. Number one, some don't pay on time. Some don't pay at all. You got to be really careful. Yeah. So, and then the second thing is they're living accommodations. Where are they staying? They're going to tell you they're going to put them up in a nice place. And you find out later they got 6 girls living in a 2-bedroom apartment. It's ridiculous. So he says all of those things matter. And so he said this was the best situation for Mandy. And so, sure, now, she FaceTimes you, and she's in Portugal, and she's got the biggest smile on her face you've ever seen. She's having the time of her life and wants to play ball for 3 to 5 years. Then her degree is in education. She wants to come back to California. Not probably north. She wants to go a little bit towards the L.A. area, and she wants to be a math teacher. That's what her entire degree's in. So, Jordan, to answer your question, that's kind of has come to fruition. You're talking to him about what you feel like there's a dream that you can help her fulfill. There's a lot of things that have to happen along the way. Then when she finally gets there, and that's exactly what you wanted to do, obviously that makes you feel good because not every situation turns out like that. You'd like to have it turn out that way, but not everyone was. Well, when they FaceTime you or they send you the social media pictures, and I don't hassle our girls much, but I always check in with them. That way they kind of know what's going on. Whether it's Kaylee, whether it's now Lauren's in Israel, well, that's the best place for her to be because that's where all the WNBA point guards go. So the agent made sure she was there. So she's there playing on the same team with Andrea Riley, who obviously we know, kind of a big deal around here. So that's where she's playing. And then you've got Kaylee, and Kaylee's in France playing. Well, Kaylee was a really interesting thing. Kaylee had 1 year. That was it. She told her agent, I'm going to play pro 1 year because I'm going to go to PT school back up in Omaha close to home. They told me that I could play ball my 1 year out of college, but I've got to get back into PT school and get that rolling. And so this team took her on and said, we'd love to have you play as a backup 5. And so that's worked out really well for her. So there you have 3 kids that to me, at first, Lauren knew she was going to play pro. I mean, she came here for 1 year going, I'm going to play pro. The other 2, I'm not sure if I'm going to be good enough, but I hope I can maybe give it a shot when 4 years are done. So all of that has worked out really well for them. They got Brittany Martin playing in Luxembourg, and Brittany Martin told us, I'm done playing basketball. I don't want to play no more. And then she sits out a year, whatever it was. She's up living at home, being a social worker, and tells her dad, and her dad and I still talk a lot, tells her dad, I think I want to go play pro. Her dad's like, what are you talking about? You haven't played basketball in like 2 or 3 years. You know, you went to Tech for a little bit and tried the coaching, did not like that. You come back home here, you're a social worker here, and now you're going to go play ball? Yeah, I feel like I'm going to play. So agent hooks her up. She's in Luxembourg. First game out, she had like 33 points, 23 rebounds. And I'm just laughing going, that's Brittany Martin right there, you know. So anyway, it's kind of interesting how things happen. But from a coach's standpoint, that warms your heart because, yeah, we'd like to win every game. Sure, you'd like to win championships and all of those. But when you really dig down deep, why are you doing what you do? You're trying to help kids fulfill their dream. You know, whether you're a high school business teacher and a kid really wants to go to whatever school, how can we get you into that university? Your GPA's got to be up to here. You've got to do this right. And I'll write you a letter of reference. And I'll help you any way I can. You're just trying to help kids reach the goal that they want to reach. And so when it happens, that's just the best feeling in the world that money can't buy. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Coach, you lose those 3 seniors last year, and you got a young team this year. Got some pieces. You know, got another California girl out from Cassie DeLapp. Just what do you see from this team? And I know last night was senior night for Carly, Maria, and Latasha. But what do you guys see from this team going forward? Such a young crew.
Well, I mean, Jordan, if you look at our group, you know, you feel pretty good with the wing spots, and we'd love to have everybody. I mean, the main thing is I'm hearing all these comparisons about, you know, other Big 12 teams like Iowa State, what they went through last year, finishing 14 and 17, and then where they're at this year.
Yeah.
Well, that core group hung around. They added some pieces. The Middleton girls are a really good point guard, by the way. They added some pieces, and all of a sudden, you know, they're going to finish, first or second in the conference? And because those kids hung together, stuck it out, and had a vision, and Bill Finley sold them on that. Well, I kind of think we're in the same boat. You know, I think we've got some pieces, as you mentioned. Obviously, the addition of Vivian Gray has been huge, and we knew that when she was a high school player and tried like heck to get her then. But obviously, she's been a tremendous addition for us. Feel like Jamie Asbury's figuring out how to play at this level, and it's so hard as a point guard, probably the hardest position. Cassie DeLapp is really a 4 player, but she's playing the 5. And she's a kid that, you know, sits out her senior year because of a knee injury, comes here. We did some more work on her knee to kind of get her rehabbed right, and she's thrown to the fire immediately. And so the amount of confidence and growth that she's made has been really, really exciting for all of us. And she's a kid that really likes the game and has a lot of pride. But you're throwing some pieces in there. You're kind of looking around like, you know, now, wait a minute. Miriam Nanu steps up and hit some big shots for us yesterday and actually guarded really well. Well, as most junior college kids are, it takes them a year to kind of get used to the speed and what it's like to play at this level. You can kind of see her now going, yeah, that's why you're recruited by Oklahoma, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Oklahoma State. Those are the 4 finalists for her. Luckily, she came here. Well, you kind of saw glimpses of her last night. A little bit of confidence, blocking some shots, trying to guard the Williams kid, who's a really good player. But then they're going zone, and Miriam stepping out in the baseline, knocking shots down and not thinking twice about it. So she's kind of playing more free and the way she's capable of playing. Well, you're looking at those pieces. You still got the steadiness of a Jaden Hobbs. You know, that's the kid that just knows how to win and doesn't mind taking the big shot at the right time. She's done that her whole life. You know, that's why she's got gold balls all over her house, and that's who Jaden is. You know, and so when you look at all of those pieces, you're trying to figure out, okay, where do all these going to go? You kind of feel good about who we're bringing in. You know, with the recruiting class, you know, we're bringing in a kid from a junior college, South Georgia Tech in Georgia, Begay Sar, who's a 6'3", 6'4", and she's just a back to the basket banging player. You know, that's what I do. I'm not. Don't mention anything about stretch in my game. I go to the block, I post up, I get ball, and I put it in the basket. That's what I do. Well, you need that, and as we've seen against the Baylors and the others, it's great to have Cassie and Miriam. but you need more. You just got to have kids. Well, this kid's from the Senegal in Africa, and I got to see her play twice this year, and that's exactly who she is. She don't mess around. She's I'm going to go down there, I'm going to post and throw it in here, and I'll make good decisions. So that's a plus. We have a 6'4" post player coming out of New Orleans, Kennedy Jackson. I like her game because she can be a stretch. Now I went to watch her play on senior night. I mean, I'd seen her play, and it's AAU and all that there inside. She comes up trailing a break and drops a 3, and then she comes off the bounce and kind of pulls up, hits a jumper. And I'm kind of looking around like nobody's like oohing and on, like so that must be normal. But she's a kid that I think could be a really good player for us. I think as normal high school kids go, it's going to take a little to get used to the physicality of it. But we do get, Nick Hoheisler is a tremendous strength coach, and I think he sees her and goes, I like her frame, and we could really make her into quite a player. And then I think the surprise kid in our class is the young lady out of Brazil. She's going to be pretty special. She's a 6'3" kid that can really bounce around. Her name is Sarah Rodriguez, and I've spent a lot of time there recruiting her, and she was one of those kids that was kind of hidden a little bit, and that helped us. But she's a talent, guys. She's a 6'3" kid that will play on the wing, extremely athletic, one of those kids that can dunk off the bounce. And so you're saying, well, did you just say she can dunk a ball? Yeah. She can play. She plays above the rim, elevates on a jump shot, very long at 6'3", but really plays the position well. So you're going, okay, now wait a minute. Kind of mixing this up a little bit here. We've got some kids that you're looking at. Can Bryn Gerlich step in there and help us a little bit next year? Can an Abby Winchester be that energizer kid off the bench that can kind of come in there? So you're kind of looking at a group of players that if this core group stays together and they develop the leadership that you're expecting from them, and you bring in the other pieces and get them really adjusted well through the summer, then you just don't really know. But I do think the pieces are coming to where maybe – were the pieces there this year? Yeah, but everybody matures at different times, and you can't speed that up. It's like with Miriam. You can't speed that up. Miriam's going to be able to play when she gets into that comfort zone. Cassie the Lap, you'd like to speed it up, but the girl sat out 1.5 years. She's trying to figure out who she is. And what you're seeing now is not really what Cassie's going to be like in 4 years. She is going to be a kid that can really step out and shoot the basketball. She can really play that way. But she's not ready for that yet just because she's been out of it for so long. And so, I think there's a lot of hope there. I'm excited about what we have coming in, but I still think we're still looking at some JUCO kids that we're really, really heavy on right now that could come in and maybe fill a couple of spots that we feel like can make a push because where we're at, nobody's happy about where we're at right now from players and coaches alike. But at the same time, I think you have to be realistic and honest with yourself and go, what do we need to compete at that level? And we have to go get that taken care of.
Well, Coach, obviously a year that maybe had some struggles and a little bit of trial in it, but sounds like the future is in good hands, obviously, with you and the coaching staff, and wish you all the best in your off-season preparations for hopefully another run at the NCAA tournament next year.
That'd be great, guys. I really appreciate the time, too.
Oh,
I really
thank
do.
you.
You bet.
Yeah, so Jordan and I, thanks again to Coach Annan for joining us here. Jordan and Jordan will be back just after this to finish up the podcast. Welcome back into the Triple Play Sports Production Studios. It's the Cowgirl Coverage podcast, and thanks again to Coach Annan for joining us. I thought that was really interesting, some of the stories that he told, and obviously you wouldn't bet against this team as far as the future being bright under the leadership of guys like Coach Annan. Yeah, and I really enjoy how he's a guy that you even go to a practice and you see the care he has for his players, and he really puts a lot of time in. Like you mentioned, he gets up early in the morning. He's looking at the scouts for the next games and just puts a lot of time in. He's very very good with the players in terms of make sure they're going to school, and because he obviously was a business teacher in the high school, so he knows that side of it. So yeah, he's a guy that I really appreciate him being here. I'm pretty sure Oklahoma State does too. Not a word that I don't think he mentioned much in our interview with him, but something that he just exudes is passion for the game of basketball and passion for helping kids. And he might have even said that, passion for helping kids reach their goals. And he's done a great job of that so far, and no doubt he's going to continue that on into the future. Another guy doing that is Kenny Gajewski, the coach for the softball team, and good weekend for them. Obviously saw 3 of their games get canceled. Doubleheader against Seattle get canceled. Saw their game against Northern Iowa on Sunday get canceled. And that Northern Iowa won, and to a certain extent Seattle. You expect to win all 3 of those games, and would have been nice to really get a stranglehold here on the schedule. But nonetheless, you're 14-5. You're feeling pretty good. And let's pull up the softball standings here. Texas Tech moves into 15th in the country. They're now 18-1. Number 3, Oklahoma. They're 15-2. Number 9, Texas, 16-3. They vault into the top 10. And then number 19, Oklahoma State, 14-5. That's where they slot in. Baylor falls out of the top 25. They're 10-8, still receiving some votes, but just 7. So Baylor went from a team, I believe, ranked 3rd. Yeah, they were 3rd in the national poll as far as Big 12 teams go, and now down into 5th place. They've been in 5th since the first weekend and continue to struggle a little bit, but still above 500. Iowa State barely scraping above 500 at 9-8, and then a pretty ugly record at 4-14 for the Kansas Lady Jayhawks on the softball side of things. So coming up, I guess first of all, let's talk about this past weekend. You and I were both out there Saturday for the McNeese State and Northern Iowa games. They finally got the bats rolling. We talked to Vanessa Shippey last week. Syracuse kind of helped ignite the bats a little bit, unfortunately for her, but fortunately for the Cowgirls. And good to see her back in town. Obviously, they honored her in several different ways, including throwing out the first pitch of that Syracuse game. But what was your takeaway? What was the biggest takeaway for you from the weekend?
Yeah, it was nice to actually get to see, because otherwise the only time I saw him play was down there played at LSU on ESPN. So it's nice to see him play in person. 3 of their wins were run rule, including both games Saturday. I really liked seeing how they approach the plate, because we talked before in the weeks before this series that they hadn't been really doing really well at the plate. They've been striking out. They've been leaving people on base, which was a bad problem last year. And so talking to Coach Gajewski and Macy Montgomery, she talked about how Vanessa even told her that they were taking some good pitches and letting some bad ones or trying to hit the bad ones. So they try to work on their plate vision a little bit. And I think it showed. I mean, they had a lot of home runs this past tournament, including some wind that, otherwise some of those long balls might have gone over if they hadn't been into the wind. And I really liked seeing how they were actually hitting the first pitch like they mentioned they would do, and seeing that kind of progress right before your own eyes. The one thing that still needs to get worked on is the defense. So I saw a couple times some errors that should have been made, including one. Sydney Pennington dropped the pop fly right in the infield. But it was nice seeing Samantha Schau play, including for Saturday. She had an incredible game. The first half of the doubleheader against McNeese State, she started, had 7 strikeouts, complete game, even though it was only 5 innings. And then she, I think, when she had 5 RBI in that game, included a homer and started off the scoring. So it was incredible to see her play in person.
Yeah, she was terrific. Riley Bayless, I think, went 0 for 0 with like 3 walks and sacrifice fly. She had a nice game in the first game. Obviously, 8 RBIs on the day, I believe, for Maddie Sue Montgomery. She was terrific again. Obviously, those two, Schau and Montgomery, ranked near the top of Big 12 in just about every offensive category. And then you talk about what Schau brings on the defensive side, or in the circle, pitching wise, and you just realize how incredibly meaningful she is to this team, and how big she's going to be down the stretch for this club. I want to play this audio from the weekend. This was on Saturday after those games. We talked to Coach Gajewski. I asked him about the defense. Here's what he had to say.
Still could make some more plays. We're getting better play at third. Sydney's really, over the last couple of weeks, is really starting to really play well at third. And so, you start to see that kind of stuff. Sue's, she's steady Eddie. Kylie's settling in some. Not perfect yet, but she's settling in, starting to lead with her voice, too. I'm happy with that part of it. We're not where we got to be, to win any kind of championship. We're going to have to keep playing really, really well.
So I thought that was kind of interesting because obviously he mentions Pennington, and other than that one glaring miss where you dropped the pop fly that was can of corn, essentially. She played well. And like I was telling you guys earlier off air, I think it's important because if she does play well, I think that'll kind of, to a certain extent, settle Kylie Naomi down. And we already saw offensively she's going to be a beast this year. If she can get the glove rolling a little bit, she's going to be a terrific freshman, potentially all-freshman team, potentially freshman of the year. That's the type of caliber of talent she is at short.
Yeah, she is a great young spark, and talking about her and Cheyenne Factor, Coach Cassie called them a cornerstone. I should have done my research going in there Saturday because I wasn't at Friday's game. So when I saw Cheyenne Factor's name on the starting list, I'm like, oh, is this kind of like a Rob Walton thing? Is he just going to be replacing her later on, just putting her name on there? And John Langan was like, no. And so we saw why. She hit a home run, I think, on her first at bat, and she had done well in fall ball. I remember her now. They're tweeting about her a lot, and she's playing well, but you never know how this kind of translate. She's had a couple ankle sprains, but now she's back to being fully healthy, and she provides a lot in the outfield. So I think having her in the outfield with her speed and also her power at the plate, coupled with Kylie Naomi's speed and power at the plate, that's really two cornerstones, like Coach Gajewski mentioned, you can build on in the future with them just being freshmen.
Well, and the thing about Factor, and I asked her about this, was her versatility. She was kind of very humble about it, but seriously, I mean, it's hard to take you off the lineup card if you can play different places, because again, you're not just a center fielder, you're not just a second baseman, right? Because if your offense is going through a slump, my question is, as a coach, and this would be if I was coaching, how can I keep you on the field then? And part of that is playing good defense. And if you're also playing good defense, or if you're versatile on defense, you can play multiple places. If someone else is struggling, it's easier to slot you in. So depending on where she is and how she progresses, she was 3 for 3, 3 runs and an RBI on the first game against McNeese State, and then Northern Iowa for Cheyenne Factor. She just kept it rolling. One of the few that kept it rolling in both games. 1 for 2. She had a walk. She scored a run. Had an RBI. So I believe that was the game she hit the home run in for her. And she obviously was smashing the ball all over the place and actually reached her one non-hit on the day. She reached base on that. It was a fielding error. So she was still able to get on base, still able to make some things happen. So she was just about perfect on the day for Oklahoma State. So that was good for her. And obviously, as you move on here, the midweek games have been stinkers for Oklahoma State under Gajewski. There's no other way to put it. And you have Wichita State coming in tomorrow, a game that you were supposed to go up and play there. Might be nice to just keep on the home dirt and try to keep this roll going.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason we talked about this in the radio show earlier is the reason that they've had bad games in midweek is because they hadn't had the pitching depth. So you'd be rolling out basically your ace, and if you did that, then they'd be tired on the weekend, which happened a lot, especially when they had Brandon Needham a couple years ago. I think she pitched pretty much every game. So I think now that you have the depth, you can put somebody out there that you're comfortable with, and you have a feeling they can win this game, that you can save, your star like a Shao or a Logan Simonek, save them for those first games of the series or maybe the last game of a series so you can have them in the rubber match. But I think now you can have your Sam Clakley or Gabby Sprank, and they can be probably your midweek starters. I think they have what it takes, and especially Clakley with her experience. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her tomorrow in this game against Wichita State. I think that the overall improvement in the midweek game will become because of the circle and having that pitching depth.
Well, you know what's interesting is also you have to think about how this relates to your offense too. You can throw Clakley out there tomorrow. And again, tomorrow's game at 5 o'clock. And if you are looking forward to the weekend, and we know that's part of it, is you have to be conscientious of what's coming up. That's how you coach baseball and softball with how many games they play. You have to be conscientious of that. If you go out there and she pitches 3 innings and your offense is able to build a 6, 7, 8-run lead, maybe you feel a little more comfortable putting Gabby Sprang in the circle for a couple of innings and try to finish it out and trying to get her some confidence, because we know Coach Gajewski said he wants to get her more innings. He only gets her 1 inning this weekend, and that's not enough to get her going. Once you get her rolling, if you find out that she's a quality pitcher, and everyone expects her to be, but if you find out she is capable of competing at a high level at this level, all of a sudden this is one darn formidable pitching staff. You can start talking about going 4 deep and using Clakeley like out of the pen, or using Simonek out of the pen, or trying to close out games with shot. I mean, it's like you can go endless. I mean, with this and how impressive you could be. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow and seeing how the offense could potentially impact the defense, and how it could impact the pitching as well in these midweek games, and some of them trying to go 4 or 5 deep, because they also have a freshman back there as well.
Kelly Maxwell is their freshman, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you could still have plenty of options behind that. So, coming up this weekend, number 24, just staying in the USA Today and Coaches poll, is Oregon. I believe they fell out of the ESPN poll. So, Oregon earlier this year looked like, man, this might be a tough series to go up there and win. Now you got to be – you probably never, against the top 25 team, have sweep in mind. But a team that's not playing their best softball, probably, you might expect to go up there and maybe at least win the series, certainly. Yeah,
Coach Gassy talked today about they're kind of going through turmoil right now. Obviously, Melissa Lombardi goes up there. She used to be an assistant OU, and now she's their coach. And they had some people leave, and it's kind of just a program in flux right now in transition. But I think if you are OSU, and this week – obviously, Wichita State's a team you had trouble with last year, but they're out without their best pitcher, and I think you have a better team than you had last year. So I think you can get that win tomorrow. Monkey off your back. Go up to Eugene. It's going to be rain, cold, but they already played in the cold weather last week, so that should be a problem. And you really can think that they could go 4-0 this week. They could come out this week being 19-5. I mean, it's a possibility. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's a possibility. And I think you can go up there with confidence, especially if you have Clakeley or Spring play tomorrow. You save Samantha Shaw. I mean, I know it's the same as baseball, but it helps out that she won't be as worn going a complete game against a team like Wichita State, to have her go out there and set the tone for your first game against Oregon, and hopefully you have a sweep in mind.
Well, that's the tricky thing, right? Because you could use Shaw tomorrow, and the excuse would be, well, we want to keep our momentum rolling. But you could also save her and have her as fresh as possible. And then she's scary. I mean, that's a scary proposition that if Xiao goes into a weekend not having pitched midweek, you could theoretically use her twice. And we might see that, seeing as it's a doubleheader on Saturday up there in Eugene. So be interesting to see how that all shakes out. And can't argue with 14-5 record. I understand that they're going to feel like they should be 16-3, I believe is what Chelsea Alexander told us last week. They feel like they should have had a couple more wins, but I mean, you can't argue with the results that they've had and the start that they've had. It's been really impressive for them. So good luck to them this week. And then obviously Cowgirl Soccer. They get a 4-1 win over Rogers State. Now it's Rogers State. The Hillcats. I mean, what do you take from this? It's good to get your feet back under you. It's good to be back out on the pitch. It's good to be back rolling the ball across the ground. Good to see it bulge the back of the net, quite frankly, because those are games you're supposed to win by multiple goals, and one that you're probably disappointed you gave up a goal. But you got to understand that this is spring ball. You're trying to get your feet back under you, trying to get some momentum headed into the summer, and then everyone kind of goes their separate ways a little bit, and then reconvening in fall, you try to pick up where you left off if you do have a successful spring season, which they did last year. So I'll be interested to see if we're able to talk to Colin Carmichael coming up here and see what his goals were for the spring season and how he's able to achieve them in the spring season, and if they were able to coming up here, if after the 5 games, if he feels that they've done their job, if he feels that they've taken the necessary steps that he thought they needed to take in the spring. Obviously, after very disappointing, you dealt with a lot of injuries. The injury bug bites, you do your best. Sometimes it's not going to be enough. But nonetheless, injuries or not, it was a disappointing season last fall for them. And then they lose Haley Woodard and some of their leaders, but they still got a lot coming back. So they got UCO coming up this weekend. Should be another one of those I don't want to say easy wins, but another one you expect to get some things done, try to get some new players out there, try to get some new faces, everyone trying to contribute.
Yeah, you get a tune-up game, pretty much is what you call it. And I think that it is good to see the ball go in the back of the net and get some confidence going for them, especially going into summer. And I think what's going to be really great is if they can get some good weather this weekend, because last week against Rogers State, it's the same day we were over at Cowgirl State. I mean, it was freezing, so I can only imagine how they were out there. But I think that getting some wins against these teams, and I would have I'm not going to go out and say this, but I would bet UCO is probably a bit better competition than Rogers State based on the size of the school, probably be able to get better recruits. So it could be more of a gauge of, hey, how are some of the younger players, acclimating to the college level from high school, playing against a D2 school like UCO.
Saturday's certainly supposed to be windy, but it says on the weather app, if you subscribe to what the weather app says, 62 degrees. So that is certainly better than what they were dealing with last weekend. So good soccer weather coming up. I guess we'll move on to equestrian. Finally, I mean, man, we started talking about these. They started talking about this team and watch them go, man. They are on a 4-match winning streak, including a couple up in Delaware this weekend, and most notably a 12-8 win over TCU. That was not in Delaware, but it was a big win considering the fact you were closing out Big 12 play, trying to gain some momentum here headed into the postseason. You beat number 2 in the country, SMU. You beat TCU at home. You beat a couple of different teams, won a true road match against Delaware State, and then you beat South Dakota State up in Dover, Delaware. You come back home, try to close it out here at home where you've been terrific against Fresno State.
Yeah, and eventually we started talking about them. They started doing well. I think it's more of just the better being in the spring, I guess, because they struggle in the fall. But I think getting that win against TCU, because we talked about that, how it's kind of a revenge match. They had lost in the fall. Because getting that win against a ranked opponent in TCU and also a conference foe helps you out. And they're above 500 now. They're getting all the momentum in the world. And they're going to be coming back home this weekend for Fresno State Senior Day. And to get a win there, 5 straight, heading to the Big 12s, which I think they're hosting at Todesek Arena. Man, you could be going on like an 8-match winning streak going into the Nationals.
Well, and that's something to keep in mind. You bring up a great point that they are at home for the Big 12 championship. So, yeah, that is huge because, again, we've seen them. They've been a little bit different at home than they have been on the road simply because of whatever it might be. Home comfort, home cooking, however you want to put it. They've been terrific at home. So, hopefully they're able to continue that and maybe win a Big 12 title. And if you do that, you're going to be setting yourself up in good position here for nationals. So I believe we talked about the upcoming golf, women's golf last week.
We jumped the gun.
Yeah, and then you were over at Greenwood Tennis Center, as long as we're hitting all the sports here. What'd you hear from Coach Chris Young and everything surrounding the women's tennis team?
Yeah, they're coming back home this weekend. We're starting off with a match against Gonzaga. They had a week off last week. They're completely healthy now. We knew they had some nagging injuries a little bit, but they were able to get Sophia Blanco into the Blue Grays. Last week we talked about that, how they swept that Sleeping Wake Forest team that's now in the top 20. That helps them out. I think they're still in the top 10 in the ITA rankings. Overall, it's a completely different feel than it was 3 weeks ago when they were 4-5 and they were coming off, I think, 4 straight losses, and they just didn't feel that confident. Now you're thinking, man, we're doing pretty well. We're still getting the respect we want, from the national rankings, and we're coming back home. And we've had a week off where they can prepare. I think they've been working on, because we know if you been around Cowgirl tennis under Chris Young, they've been very good at getting the doubles point early on. I mean, that's just a given. When they went to the finals in 16, I think they won like every doubles point. So they're always, you automatically give yourself a 1-0 advantage. This year, it's not, kind of shaking things around. You lost Vladi Bobic from last year when her and Sophie Blanco went up to nationals and lost and became runner-up. So you lost them, so you're kind of dealing with chasing some people around here. He mentioned that they got to be better at the net. They're good at the back line, but the net player and the doubles has got to be more aggressive, and they've kind of been letting some balls go by that they could have gotten in recent years. So that's been something he's been working on. But other than that, he's pretty confident in how they're playing. And he thinks that this is the last 2 non-conference matches this weekend, and then you go to start conference play. So already beat Texas Tech last week, so you got to be feeling pretty good about yourself.
No doubt about it, Jordan. And Friday, Gonzaga, and then heading up to Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, for Wichita State on Sunday. So busy weekend for all the Cowgirl sports, and we will have the reaction and the best coverage of that next week, Tuesday, on the Cowgirl Coverage podcast. It'll be episode 11. Can you believe it?
No, I can't. I think we've been all right. We haven't been fired yet, so it's been all right.
Helps when we're our own bosses.
It does help, but I think we've been getting good guests on, and we've had some really good interviews so far. And so I really think we're doing what we planned to do when we started this, in the beginning of the year. I can't believe it's 11 weeks already, though.
Yeah, I think we've had a goal, we had a concept that we wanted to hit, and I think we have hit it for sure. So keep it here for the best guests here in the Cowgirl realm. Obviously, we've been incredibly lucky with who we've been able to get on. Hopefully, Chris Young coming on soon. Maybe a month or so down the road, we'll see if we can't get Coach Colin Carmichael on. Another interesting guest that I proposed was potentially Kim Rodriguez, although she is overseas, I believe in Cyprus is where Mexico, the national team, is playing. She is a full national team player, so a lot of exciting things going around this Cowgirl program. And Jordan and I, lucky enough to talk about it every week and enjoying it every step of the way. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to Coach Annan for joining us earlier. Thanks to Jordan Bishop, my side man. I'm Jordan King. This is the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast on the Triple Play Sports Podcast Network.